Good evening, folks. Look, my hair is super straight. I got my annual haircut a couple hours ago, so you'll never see it this straight again. I don't know that I necessarily like it straight, but anyway, if I look a little weird, that's why, because I get my hair cut about every 10 months, and today was the day. So I wanted to take a few minutes and just do a short commentary, and I've titled this Human Potential. But really, I thought it might be helpful to have, this isn't brand new material. I still am making maps, and honestly, I've been having a hard time focusing because things are still getting settled with the house stuff, and emotionally it's very difficult, and I'm just feeling distracted from doing my more specific stuff. But I wanted to share this because I was having a couple of conversations with people by email about, like, what is this? What do you think is really going on? And why, right? And I've said this a bunch of times, but I'm going to try to make this a short version. So if you have someone who is like, it's a Georgia Guidestone thing and they're going to kill everybody and whatever, then you can be like, or you could consider this. So just today, someone said, so what is it? Are these people, these crazy people after immortality and they want to be gods? And I was like, well, okay, so if you try on my theory, and again, it's a theory and I'm open to being wrong about this, but that what we're dealing with is communication technology and exchanges of information, and that information is held in the field. And the field is beyond most the regular sensing of our biology, but that we have sort of intuitive access and soulful access to that. In my opinion, the goal is not about immortality, because there have been people getting into that space of the field for a very long time, whether they're people who know about Qigong, whether they're people who know about Christian mysticism, whether people who are using altered substances or meditative practices. There have been people getting into the field for a very long time. And, you know, when I was looking up Albert Pike, who was a very well-recognized Freemason, he wrote like some of the procedural books about Freemasonry. My opinion really sort of changed when I realized at the end of his life, he wrote a 600-page book on the Rig Veda. So while I think a lot of, I don't know, and there's like a bunch of like Eurocentric folks out there, but like, whereas the West seems to be focused a lot on material, you know, at least the Enlightenment sort of natural philosophers, the East was less so. So I'm pretty sure that the yogis aren't limited by the wave particle collapse, right? Like, that's not how they're operating. They're operating in a different space. So I don't think the goal is to become gods or to be immortal, because my sense is that people who understand how the system works in terms of the field realize that maybe that's actually not the whole point. Like, once you know how the system works, the idea of being a god or being immortal isn't terribly relevant. Like, that's not the top goal thing, right? It's not just to kill a bunch of people or make a bunch of money. In my opinion, and feel free to share this with people who, you know, are still trying to figure it out or consider alternative options, is that what we're looking at is the construction of, again, the noosphere, in the vein of the noosphere, but a global scale biohybrid computing system of networked souls that are coordinated in accessing the field, and that coordination happens through token engineering, through game mechanics, and through frequency. And increasingly, the frequency, our biology will have, you know, we're already antenna for the field, but that those antennas will be linked through molecular engineering. And that's where the nanotechnology and that other stuff comes in. And a lot of it is actually manipulating organic molecules. So it's not going to look like necessarily crazy town. It's like using the computational infrastructure of our biology and biophysics to make these new systems, right? These nanoscale systems that are going to attune with frequency and do the coordination at scale. So this is about networked, embodied, subconscious, right? And that's where the Jung fits in, and the archetypes, right? So biohybrid computational system at a global scale and potentially interdimensional scaling with token engineering and game mechanics and frequency that interfaces with the nanotechnology that we're swimming in, right? And that will be part of a networked embodied consciousness. And so I was looking at a video today, someone forwarded to me, and a lot of it is sort of like, oh, they're going to try to mind upload you and get rid of your body and upload all your information to the cloud. My thought is that the system, like they realize that actually the biology is the main processing system. And our biology isn't just like the us we understand as us. It is us as a constellation and host to all of these tiny microbial systems outside of us and inside of us. So I remember when I was in middle school seeing some sort of slide, like film strip thing, and it was about like the parasites that live in your eyelashes. And I just like, you're like, oh, I didn't even know that those existed, right? But our intelligence is not just what we identify as ourselves, but all of these are holobiont, and that's a really important concept. So to understand networked distributed cognition, so that we're agents and we're spread all out, right? Experiencing different conditions. That's the world sensorium and Oliver Reiser, that we're sensing. And that our sensing is both our innate biology, but then all of the companion beings that hang out with us that enhance or diminish like our sensing capacity. And that we're examining local conditions for a larger goal-oriented behavior that is programmed at a higher level, right? And I would say I don't know what the computational processing program is of that, but if that's this is something that they understand is important to global sensing, spatial computing, and the distributed cognition and embodied intelligence. Why would the goal be to get rid of everybody's body? Because the body is an important part of the computational interface. The body is what embeds you in culture and your environment. And it's that contextual grounding that's important. And then the body itself is the vessel for the soul, and the soul is the access to the field. So to me, this idea that somehow they're just going to like harvest all of the information in the memory in your brain and throw it into the internet, that's disembodied. Now, that's actually, and then throw away the bodies because those aren't useful anymore. Well, then you don't actually understand the system, because the biology is the supreme technology, as I understand it. When you understand embodying distributed cognition and embodied intelligence, you need the body. And if anything, these crazy, Sophia and Grace the robots, these blockchain networked robots, are sort of like vessels to create bodies with electronic soft robotics that are like fascia that function as bodies, right? Like, why would they be spending a whole bunch of time making soft robotic electronic functioning flesh for robots if the body wasn't important? The body is actually super important. It doesn't all just live in the internet. So that is when someone asks, like, what do you think is going on? That's what I think is going on. So all of this language about it being a bioweapon. Now, remember, language is very powerful, because what we're trying to do is we sense things, and then our brain makes up stories to try to knit together the facts that we've encountered to make them make sense, right? And so the story of the bioweapon, like in a lot of people use, there's bioweapons, well, what does that mean? Because in this particular video, the people went on to sort of seem to imply that they knew that part of the goal was using our biology for computation purposes. Well, would you call that a bioweapon? Because often the bioweapon tends to be, the implication is they're either going to use it to kill you or to turn you into a puppet and take away your free will. And I've talked about this often, but the idea is there is a protocol layer, so you don't have complete free will to do whatever the heck you want, but the free will is important to the computation because that's the choice architecture, right? And so this idea that they're going to kill you or get rid of your body, well, then that's the resource. Like it wouldn't make sense. If my hypothesis is correct, it wouldn't make sense to get rid of the bodies, because the bodies are actually the vessel for the intelligence, the vessel that is the intelligence of you and all of the other critters that are with you, and you as an antenna that is accessing the field. So you would never get rid of that. You just wouldn't. But a bioweapon narrative is very emotionally engaging, but it does position people as victims mostly, right? And it also obscures in this emotionality the other stories. Like, oh, the story actually might be that what they want you to do as you're embedded in the environment, in your body, and you're embedded in culture, is that you work with other people in socio-technical systems and you exchange signals or tokens or community currencies, and you do live action role plays, and maybe you do gaming, right? And maybe you do gaming that you like to do, right? Because they know who you are because you've got this whole digital twin. So they're going to give you an invitation to play games. And the people who are going to offer you these invitations are going to be influencers that are attuned to you, that you like. And then you're going to play the game, right? And so you're going to feel like you have the free will to do that. And in fact, you've walked onto a game board, so it's not complete free will, but you're not a husk. You're not a zombie. You're not a puppet, because that isn't interesting computationally, okay? That isn't productive computationally, those things. That's a certain story, but it doesn't actually hold water. Why would they turn a bunch of people into zombies? Because what? They just want to like tear things apart and kill other people? Like, is that what this is about? Because I'm pretty sure that they're not building all of the smart infrastructure and investing all their time in nanotechnology, for 20 plus years to kill everybody and to not use it in some way, right? And if they already knew how they were going to program everybody just to make them do the thing, so it's like, I've already programmed the play and I'm just going to put everybody in a role and zap them with frequencies and nanotechnology and make them do exactly what I told them. Don't you think that would get pretty boring? That's not interesting. What's interesting is to create a protocol layer and a game board and then invite people who are excited to join and solve problems. And then to have everything on the ledger to document that in the collective problem solving space, and to do all of your scouting, right? Like do the intelligence, like to go to the places in your body, in your biology, and to sense them and send them back to the hive, right? Or to the game, to the team, right? To the team. And so to me, the discussion around MK Ultra and mind control, right? So the mind control to me sounds like, for the most part, we have something we want to make you do it. We'd like to turn you into a sex slave assassin, so that when your handler does the thing or does whatever the words are or whatever, or zaps you with the directed energy beam, you go and do the routine that we programmed you to do. I think, to my sense, like the idea of using biology at scale is far bigger than like a stable of, sexy assassins. Like, it's far bigger than that, right? And again, a lot of the stuff is focused on children. I've talked about using children as channels into the field. So to me, mind control, how much control is there? Do they want to control your mind and make you docile and take away your free will? Or do they want to mirror your mind, your imagination, your creativity, your intuitiveness because of the feelings in your gut from all those little critters in there, right? Do they want to mirror that and then use that for pattern recognition, for problem solving? To me, that seems far more likely, given all of the stuff they're building. It doesn't look like the apocalypse. It does not look like the end of the world out there in the world. There's a lot of money being invested in smart housing and smart architecture and smart environments and smart cars and smart everything. Would they make that if they were just going to turn everybody into a zombie? It doesn't actually make sense. It doesn't make sense. So I guess that kind of fits on my main thing. In this video too, they were talking a lot about eugenics, which I've talked about in the past. And focusing on genes. And again, eugenics towards making obedient citizens. And I would say, to a certain extent, they want you obedient enough that you don't walk off the game board. But most of that, the obedience, is not because they're going to get you with like a ray and like make you into the puppet, is that they're going to control you with stories, right? So they're going to create teams. They're going to create storylines. They're going to create identities. They're going to create these archetypal fields so that you'll play the games with the people that you like to play them with. And then those people that you like to play games with will sell you on games like wellness, right? And sell you on games like biohacking and neurotropics and mindfulness meditations and altered substances and supplements. And, maybe there'll be some molecules in there that can be engineered for the team, right? The teaming frequencies, that's very likely. Like, these self-assembling particles aren't just coming from the government, right? They're organic molecules involved in all sorts of ingestible things that you put in your body that are sold to you, not just by big pharma, but by other folks too, right? So they're going to want you to play the game, I guess, is my point. So is the eugenics that they want to get obedience, or maybe they just want really imaginative people who can be controlled not by remote frequency, but more by the culture into which they're embedded. And you can see how social media has created that culture, really. And so even though I wrote that whole big thing on eugenics, sometimes you have to stop and revisit in light of new knowledge. And so I would say the more work that I've done in looking into Michael Levin and the morphogenetic fields and how this overlaps with Jung and this analysis, right? It's the materialism of eugenics and the focus on the gene manipulation, I think, is limiting in my opinion. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's coming online, and I've been collaborating with Steffers on some of this stuff about these opsins and rhodopsins and light activated protein engineering. But it's not just genetics. It's actually the field, I think, that is the more interesting area of manipulation. And the field is consciousness and story a lot of times. So I think we have to be mindful when we're thinking about genes and brains that we don't get hung up in the physical materialism of it, because I think ultimately we're souls that are embodied with this access to the field, which is why we're being invited to play the games. And the body is important as the vessel. But the body is not just controlled by the molecules and the gene editing, but the frequencies, right? So it's not just about brains and neurons and the central nervous system. It's about the cell-to-cell communication. And that's where the distributed networks and the Web3 token engineering comes in. And so when people talk about guided evolution, they're going to guide our evolution, they're going to make us into something we don't want to be. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they've got your number and they're going to invite you to be the thing you want, because they like a variety. The goal is not homogeneity. It's a symphony. They just want to be able to know where you are when you're needed so that you can be called on to play your role, right? And to willingly play your role in that. So they just need you tagged with metadata, which is what all the social media feeds are. So a lot of the stuff around Darwin, the folks working in complexity theory and emergence, they're saying, well, Darwin wasn't really so much about survival of the fittest. I mean, that was a little bit, but he was much more about cooperation, right? And so I think we need to understand how the cooperative side of Darwin and Lamarck is going to be fed into this idea of the collective and the commons and the eusocial, turning humans into eusocial insect colony type of system. So yeah, I think those are the main things I wanted to cover. But yeah, managing the field of frequency, and that's happening through entrainment of your heart field and the spirit and the soul, because ultimately I believe that it is the computational processing power that is what is happening. It's not zombies. It's not puppets. It's not Georgia Guidestones. And if you want to call it a bioweapon, the thing is, the bioweapon is obscuring biohybrid social computational systems, right? And who's talking about that? So this one video dabbled in a tiny bit into that and then backed off and said, oh my God, there's going to be an eclipse and y'all are all going to be zombies, right? So I would say, how do you hold those two things, right? Because I'm pretty sure maybe people get excited about zombies and games and whatever, and then that goes viral, and then that's, some more of this emotional, heart-rending stuff. I don't think we're all going to be zombies on the apocalypse, right? I think what's being built is a networked system of ensouled consciousness using molecular engineering, biomolecular engineering, using these proteins, using these opsins, which are all going to be labeled as organic, so they can put them in all of your fancy supplements that you're taking, right? And that the body is going to do the self-assembly. Like the body is going to do the self-assemblies that are working this at scale. And so, part of the thing is, and again, I'm not saying any of this is okay. I'm just saying it's important how we understand it, because then our strategies are going to be different depending on how we understand it. So a lot of people, we want to be the heroes. I've talked about this before. I wanted to be the hero. Like I didn't set out wanting to be the hero, but I wanted to do what was right. I wanted to be a good citizen. I wanted to stand up for public schools, and I wanted to be acknowledged for this important work, right? And so to do that, you need to have your, oh gosh, what do you call it? Not your enemy, your, the name will come to me later. Nemesis. Like you've got a nemesis, right? I mean, you look at the whole hero's journey. You've got the Star Wars, you've got Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, right? For everybody who wants to be the Luke Skywalker, you need the Darth Vader, or else your Luke Skywalker just really, it doesn't look like anything, because you don't have anything, you don't have any energy to push off of, right? You need that thing. So I would say a lot of the resistance, like they really need these arch enemies, right? They need these people to be the cabal and the evil guys and the this and the that. And I'm like, honestly, it's, in my opinion, how this is advancing forward, besides my placeholder of the interdimensional biofilm, is the people who are like the paper pushers doing day-to-day, grunt work and lab work or whatever. They're just regular people. They're not Darth Vader, actually. But we need, in our story of our mind, we need them to be the Darth Vaders, right? And so in that, the people who are going to, tell you that you're going to be zombies is because you need to be the hero. And what I'm saying is maybe that archetype isn't serving us well. Maybe that we, if we can get some distance and see that there are a variety of archetypes in play, that we don't need to be invested in one of them, and that we can get some distance and see the story across the different slices and get a better view. Because if we stay stuck in one archetype, we're only going to be engaging with the material in a certain way, and it's just going to be redundant. So like after 4 years, we're still going to be looking for Darth Vader and talking about these lunatics. And I'm like, as strange as it may sound, it is not lunacy to imagine that, and I called this human potential, right? The human potential movement, because so much of the research that I've been doing goes back to the human potential movement. And a lot of this goes into, all these people who are going to, tell you how to maximize your, your body or your mind or your business or materialize your wealth, all of these people who are these thought leaders out there. But the human potential movement goes back to the 50s, 60s, and really the 70s, right? Is of people accessing broader sensing than you actually, like regular people have. The Barbara Marx Hubbards, right? The Esselins, all of that. Maslow, what are you sensing? And then how can you build up these other aspects? So there is a logic as we move into the next phase of computing, which is optical based and photonic based, which is where the opsins, the light activated proteins, come in. That's where it's going, that the idea of using a body, which does without thinking. I mean, I'm not saying we don't think, but we're not actively thinking on like every moment that there are the things being assembled in our biology at very, very high sophisticated levels, that you would not use that in your computational system, right? And that we're embedded in culture and the environment. So you can see how we have culture wars to get all of the culture nailed down and all of the metadata tags there. And then we have the environment, which is the whole, the planet's going to die if we don't, all, bring tote bags and, throw away, not stop using straws and that sort of thing. But the environment is important. And so it's actually not lunacy to imagine a global scale computer that has access to the field through the human potential, through the embodied intelligence of the soul. So, I'm getting close to half an hour and I don't want it any longer than this, but I encourage you, like, get some feedback from people. Does this make sense? Is this a hypothesis that holds water, right? Looking at what we're looking at. Like, if you're comparing it against the Georgia Guidestone zombie story versus human computing, using of human potential through nanotechnology and frequency for collective problem-solving behavior that we'll want to participate in, that we'll want to because they've told us a story. People we like will tell us a story. Maybe they'll sell us some products, with their multi-level marketing schemes or whatever. And we'll participate and we'll earn some community currency tokens with our freedom wallets. To me, it kind of holds together, right? But then it makes us actually revisit what happened in the last 4 years and the various characters. And I'm not even saying most of the people involved even know that where their role fits into the bigger picture. Like they're just doing their archetype, right? They're on a game board and they've got some certain constraints built in, and then they just react within those constraints that are provided. But I do think that's, I would like to hear if you've tried to talk with people about it and see what they have to say, right? Like, have you talked to influencers about it? Have you talked to the people who assert that everybody's going to be die and turned into a hackable puppet animal? Does it make sense? Does the mind upload that they're going to harvest your mind and throw it to the internet and get rid of your body? Does that actually make sense? If the body is central to the processing, if the body is the seat for the soul that has the access to the field, which is the human potential, right? Or is the idea of refining human potential that has been going on for 50 years through SRI, through remote viewing, through astral projection, through all these things? We see mindfulness in schools. We see all of this meditation, like, oh, your police chief has to do meditation now. And, we're going to link into also sort of social impact bond things. Why is that? So anyway, thanks for joining me for this short. And hopefully I have a couple maps that I'm working on. Hopefully I'll be more motivated to get them done and not be so distracted. Yesterday I put a fresh coat of paint on the shelves in my closet. And I got paint in my hair. I'm not a great painter, but anyway, so thanks everybody for joining in. We'll talk more later.